sanctuary is calling once more. A new terror walks across its folds. We'll bid adieu to the familiar Western kingdoms and make the enigmatic Eastern continent our new home. We've only had a few snippets of this land over the years, and a lot of it remains a mystery. But don't fret, I'm here today to provide some insight into these new zones, what to expect, important points of note, and a bit of backstory to each of the treacherous lands you'll encounter. But before that, let's talk about the world of Diablo, how it came to be, and why nothing ever seems to go right there. The world of Diablo is one of turmoil, division, and a whole lot of misery. Yet, it wasn't always this way. It was once a veritable Garden of Eden. A term you'll see pop up a lot in Diablo lore is the eternal conflict. That is, the all-consuming, unabating war between the archangels of the high heavens and the primevals of the burning hells. This never-ending clash is to determine which of the two powers will control all of creation, although I'm sure, for timeless and infinite beings, it's also a good way to pass the time. But a million billion years of unceasing combat wasn't an exciting prospect for all. Some wanted a break from the bloodshed. Enter Inarius, a well-respected angel serving under Tyrael. Inarius had had enough of his destiny being about spilling demonic blood for all eternity, so he thought up of an alternative. He created a world away from the war, where angels and demons could live side by side in sanctuary, as this new land would soon become known. It was hidden from both the heavens and the hells through an ingenious magical artifact called the World Stone, basically stealth camouflage for the entire world. Life was good on Sanctuary, until they realised that without their main pastime of slaughtering each other, there wasn't much to do, so they did what all mortals do when they get bored. They paired up and they did the dirty. The offspring of the union were called the Nephilim, and they were more powerful than their angel and demon parents combined. Inarius himself coupled with one such demon that I'm sure you'll see pop up here and there with Diablo 4, Lilith. Their child was Rathma, which is another name worth remembering, as his followers soon became infamous for their practices of necromancy. Like all fathers in a tragic tale, Inarius was wary of the Nephilim's power, and so modified the World Stone to dampen their abilities over generations, until they became weak, useless little creatures like you and I. Anyway, to cut a long story short, Lilith, being the obvious antagonist that she was, decided to try and kill everybody, but spared Inarius. How noble of her. She sought to hold sway over her Nephilim offspring by founding her own religion/cult, the Triune. Inarius, jealous that his former lover was getting all the attention, formed his own religion/cult, the Cathedral of Light. It was less about providing hope and faith to mortals as it was about him being worshipped night and day, because he's a grade A egotist. After the events of Diablo 2, the World Stone was shattered by Tyrael, and Sanctuary's cloaking device was no more. Demons broke through the veil and run amok. Then, after Diablo 3, a power vacuum was caused following Malthael's death, and even more demons decided to make Sanctuary their stomping ground. And now coming into Diablo 4, and this really is the worst time to call Sanctuary your home, but here we are. Over the coming years, we'll carve through every inch of the Eastern continent, otherwise known as Estua, starting with the Fractured Peaks. Now, for any of you that got an early glimpse of Diablo 4 during the open betas, I'm sure you're familiar with the Fractured Peaks. An inhospitable mountainous area, frigid and uninviting. Its landscapes are dotted with craggy spires of rock and treacherous ravines. The kind of place you'd expect no right-minded human to ever settle in. But then again, compared to the demon-infested Dreadlands, this is some prime real estate. Amidst the windswept peaks lies Hawezar, a solitary bastion against the unspeakable horrors that exist beyond the city's walls. Even here, the locals live in a state of anxiety, wary of what watches them in the dead of night. One of the town's defining features is the Cathedral of Light, followers of the vanity religion founded by Inarius. They think that their faith will bring hope, and that their hope will bring warmth. And when it's 40 below day in and day out, any form of relief is necessary. If you're caught outside the city walls, your main worry should be hypothermia. If you somehow survive that, you'll surely fall prey to all the shambling horrors, sadistic demons, and vicious wildlife. Again, really not a great place to settle down. Despite all this, it's become a destination for the most zealous of religious fanatics, hoping they'll find enlightenment in the harsh isolation of the region. Those are about the only visitors the Fractured Peaks gets. On the flip side, that means the region's plentiful ruins and dungeons remain mostly unplundered, so they're ripe for the picking. As long as you don't mind a horde of demons and a few traps and curses, but we all know that's not going to stop you. North of the Fractured Peaks lies Scosglen, and it's a sharp contrast to the game's starting zone. Based on the Scottish moors and highlands, here you'll find rolling grasslands and verdant forests. This is nature untamed. Probably as idyllic as Diablo gets, but of course, it's got its downsides. For one, just like Scotland, it rains all the time. Secondly, those woodlands you're eager to get lost in are teeming with werewolves. Khazra, a race of rabid goatmen, prowl the plains, and just as the tide rolls in on its bitter shores, so too do legions of drowned dead stumble up from the sea around Scosglen. Yet amazingly, people still decide to live here. Reanimated, bloated corpses won't stop the local populace from their fishing ventures into the frozen sea, and clusters of Druid settlements have laid roots across the rest of the land. The Druids were a movement that broke off from the barbarians just as the intrepid Balcathos was uniting the clans, and they saw Scosglen as the perfect place for them to secede from civilized society and do whatever it is that Druids do all day. Though not free from the ambitions of primevals, the land would soon become a battlefield between our Druid friends and the minions of Baal. I'd like to say that the inhabitants were able to repel the Lord of Destruction and live happily ever after. But this is Sanctuary. No one's ever happy. The scars of this conflict will be seen across the land in your travels. Keep an eye out for them, but also keep an eye out for werewolves. They will eat your face. Just south of Scosglen are the dry steppes, a stark contrast to the emerald forests and rolling showers of the last zone, because everything here is dry, hence the name. This rugged, untamed land is home to only the sturdiest, or most foolish of people. If the hazardous canyons and desolate salt flats aren't enough to keep you away, maybe the geysers shooting boiling water at you will dissuade you. Despite its harsh terrain, the dry steppes were once home to early trailblazing civilizations. They settled down, developed cultures, and tamed the land. Later still, the Zakarum religion gained a foothold here and had an influence on the region's architecture and customs. They established the Orbe Monastery, devoted to the worship of their beliefs, and strengthened their presence here. Although, in the past few decades, all their lovely buildings were sadly pillaged, because this is Diablo, and nothing nice here ever happens to anyone. The monastery still stands, however, a shadow of its former self. Its doors are open to anyone seeking a little bit of salvation. Other than that though, most notable buildings and settlements have either been reduced to rubble, or taken over by ruthless bandits, lawless barbarians, or deadly blood mages. Watch out for them on your travels. Oh, and the cannibals. Should have led with that. There are loads of cannibals here. The whole cannibalism trend has had a big uptick since Lilith's return, and swathes of the region's inhabitants have taken to just eating each other. It's not great. From the driest place in Diablo 4 to the wettest, southeast of the steppes we find ourselves in Hawezar, a fetid, festering swampland teeming with poisonous flora, poisonous fauna, and poisonous water. Yep, Diablo 4 has a poison zone, and we all love those. It's also crawling with mosquitoes, bugs, and parasites. The Crusaders ventured here after founding their order, and many of the males would shave their heads to avoid lice crawling all over their scalp. That's probably why the Crusader in Diablo 3 had a shaved head. Or maybe it was just a fashion choice, who's to say. Anyway, Hawezar is a land of disease and despair. Its swamps are fed by the melting snows of the fractured peaks, making it the perfect breeding ground for pestilence and malaise. Amongst the brigands, the assassins, and the cutthroats that you would find in any sanctuary backwater, the zone is also home to a clan of swamp witches. They practice ancient forbidden magic and perform unspeakable things to appease their serpent overlords. They might even teach you a thing or two if you're willing to pay the price, and I can already tell you, it's not going to be a good deal. Hawezar might also be home to a couple of very important locations from Diablo lore. Whilst I can't say for certain, I've got a feeling they will play some role or another in the game's lifetime. The first is one for all of you who like your magic on the unsanctioned side. Somewhere hidden amongst the clusters of venomous spiders and man-eating plants, there might be a very special tree, and in this tree is a door, and behind this door is a staircase. This fast, winding descent will take you down into the earth and to the necropolis, a sprawling underground city home to the cult of Rathma, the underground lair for any and all necromancers of note in Sanctuary. The second is even more cryptic, an entire city that is there but isn't, Ure. The story goes that Ure was besieged relentlessly by Diablo, but the residents valiantly resisted. The angels took notice and offered the city salvation. They would accept the city amongst the ethereal fields of the high heavens. All the citizens had to do was work out how to transport a massive stone city and a few 100,000 people into a different plane of existence. Somehow, they worked it out and started the teleportation ritual. But, of course, they were betrayed, and the spell did not have their intended outcome. Instead of reaching the heavens, Ure was transported into limbo, but all its worldly treasures remained. Many adventurers have searched for it, but the city's lost riches have eluded even the most determined of fortune seekers. And finally, I've saved the best till last, Kehjistan. Whilst much of Sanctuary has always been a lawless, dangerous place, the Empire of Kehjistan is one of the few places where order and civility flourished. Whilst the Western kingdoms were still rubbing small sticks together to make fire, and hitting each other with even bigger sticks, the natives of this land were building a flourishing civilization. It had a lush, fertile rainforest to the south, an abundance of game animals, and nodes of mysterious magical energy. This became humanity's first great nation, and their arcane affinity fostered a boom in science and culture. But this would also be their downfall, because, once again, this is Diablo, where everything good will always fall flat on its face, in the most spectacular fashion. The lust for power led to a war between the nation's magical clans, which tore the landscape to shreds and tainted its natural beauty. Remember Act 2 of Diablo 3? That awful, horrible, hateful land filled with sand and wasps? That's Kehjistan. That area is known as the Borderlands, and we'll be returning there in Diablo 4. The Borderlands were untamed for centuries, but the Empire finally established several footholds in it, although that was quite a while ago. Like any sense of hope in Sanctuary, they are now almost certainly in a state of disrepair or overrun by killers, cultists, or cannibals. You'll find a lot of references to former empires in the region, and the once fervent religion of Zakarum, which has since fallen to disregard. You'll make a base camp at the nation's capital, Chaldeum. After witnessing the once magnificent empire crumble all around him due to the war and demonic uprising, Emperor Hakan II ordered the capital to be sealed shut. All of the settlements on the brink of survival, travelers seeking refuge, and caravans vulnerable to bandit attacks were forsaken. When you reach this area in the game, expect a lot of misery, violence, and a whole load of people needing the help of a strapping young adventurer just like yourself. So those are the zones that you'll be able to get stuck into when Diablo 4 launches. And whilst they will surely keep you busy for many hundreds of hours, you may have noticed that this doesn't encompass the entire continent. I'm going to put on my speculation hat now, because it seems like this was very deliberate. I'd wager that Blizzard are saving a few key places to visit later into Diablo 4's lifecycle. So as a little added bonus, let's see what they could be. Now, the most obvious location to visit after we've dealt with the rest of the trouble in the eastern continent is the marshland, this huge swathe of jungle and wetlands below Kehjistan. Diablo 2 players will be familiar with this place as it was the location of Act 3. The city of Kurast was the former capital of Kehjistan, but was laid low by Mephisto and his antics. Given its importance in the general Diablo story, as well as its link to the world of Diablo 4, it's a prime candidate for a post-release expedition. But Kurast isn't the only notable city nearby. Long before this jungle metropolis served as the seat for the Empire, Vizjun was the most important place in all of Sanctuary. Yet another victim in the mage clan wars that decimated the kingdom until what was left of this former jewel of the jungle. But we can assume, what with the massive outpouring of magical energy and rampant demons across the land, that something quite menacing may now be calling this place home. South of these two former cities are the Torjan jungles, an immense rainforest teeming with danger and death, and home to the witch doctors of Diablo 3. Since the Worldstone's destruction, there may have been countless demon sightings in this untamed wilderness. There's a lot of untapped potential here to explore following the game's release, but it isn't Blizzard's only option. At the northernmost tip of the continent is Jansai, a kingdom which rivals Kehjistan's arcane prowess, as well as its history of political strife. Whilst they've been somewhat absent from the other major incidents that have shook Sanctuary, they've had a hand here and there. The wizard from Diablo 3 was from here after all. And then to the southeast lie the Scosglen Isles, a location that had been hoped for in Diablo 3, but didn't quite make the cut. This seafaring kingdom has had to defend itself against rampaging pirates, toxic flora, and monstrous wildlife. They've picked up a trick or two to help them survive this hostile land, mending their prowess with bows and javelins. It's from Scosglen that the Amazon of Diablo 2 hails from. But then again, if Blizzard are looking for future zones with the highest demon to square inch ratio, it might be best to hop across the sea and send players to the Dreadlands. Following Mount Arreat's destruction, this land, formerly known as the Northern Steppes, was reduced to an infernal hellscape. Not even the barbarians could stomach it, so they relocated. Only the truly mad would want to call this place home. Calling this place home, however, are the demon hunters. With naught else to do in Sanctuary, they whittle away their days, killing, maiming, gouging, and disemboweling any hellspawn they come across. Each of these possible locations could bring with them a fan-favourite class from Diablo's past, so if and when we set our sights on these new lands, maybe we can expect some extra surprises that change the way we play the game. And that's all for today. I hope this knowledge serves you well as you rampage around the continent. Let me know which zone you're looking forward to leaving your mark on, and which iconic locales you hope Blizzard sends us to next. For all you jumping into Diablo 4 when it releases, I hope your adventures are bloody, violent, and filled with some bountiful loot. I'll see you in Sanctuary.